I never thought a joke could cost me a fortune, or, in this case, make me realize just how far someone could take their audacity. It all started one lazy Saturday afternoon, Emma sitting across the kitchen table, a mischievous grin on her face. "You know," she said, swirling her coffee, "if you really want to, we could just get a divorce right now for $100. She laughed, expecting me to join in, to smile, maybe even play along. I didn't. I just raised an eyebrow, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. $100. She thought it was a joke, a silly fleeting quip tossed out to amuse herself. But in that moment the layers beneath her laughter revealed themselves. A lack of respect, a careless attitude, a disregard for the years we had spent building our life together. We had been together 5 years. 5 years of shared bills, shared dreams, shared mornings and late nights. And here she was joking about dismantling all of it, as if love, commitment, and trust could be measured in single bills. I stayed quiet, counting the seconds, letting her words settle in the space between us. Silence can be a more potent weapon than anger or argument. Then I reached into my wallet, slowly, deliberately pulling out a stack of hundreds, 10 of them crisp and new. I laid them on the table one by one, right in front of her. 10 hundreds? She asked, disbelief creeping into her voice. I nodded. That's your price, huh? 10 times what you thought was funny. The grin faltered, the laughter gone, replaced by something new: hesitation, realization, maybe even a twinge of fear. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the way she weighed the bills against the commitment she had always joked about. And that's when I smiled, calm but firm. Deal, I said. $100 bills, and suddenly the joke wasn't a joke anymore. It wasn't about money, it was about principle, about boundaries, about making sure she understood that some things in a relationship aren't negotiable, aren't trivial, and definitely aren't punchlines to amuse herself. Emma froze, her eyes fixed on the stack of bills. For the first time, the playful, teasing attitude I had grown so used to was gone. She blinked, swallowed, and then tried to laugh it off. You're insane, she said, shaking her head, her voice light but uncertain. But I could see the cracks forming in her composure. We had been dancing around issues like this for months, her making offhand jokes about leaving, me swallowing my pride to avoid conflict. But this wasn't just a joke. This was the culmination of a pattern. The teasing, the mockery, the subtle dismissal of my feelings. And for the first time I refused to participate. I refused to normalize disrespect. The apartment was quiet now, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. I could feel her tension, the way she shifted on her chair, her hands fidgeting. She had always been clever, always testing boundaries, always expecting me to follow her lead. But tonight, she was learning a new lesson. Some lines aren't crossed without consequences. She leaned back, her gaze darting between the bills and my face. You're really going to do this? She asked, voice tight. I nodded, calm and measured. I already did. You said it yourself, it's a deal. 10 hundreds, principle over joke. Some things are non-negotiable. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the disbelief mixing with a flicker of respect. It wasn't about the money. It was about authority, about standing up for myself, about making sure she understood that I wouldn't allow my feelings, my needs, my dignity to be trivialized for a cheap laugh. And then she said it, the small, almost imperceptible sigh, a sound that carried a hint of surrender and acknowledgement. The atmosphere shifted. Where there had been tension, uncertainty, and even mockery, there was now a delicate balance, a new dynamic forming between us. She wasn't laughing anymore, but she wasn't hostile either. There was a pause, a moment where both of us could feel the weight of what had just happened, and the quiet truth settled in. Sometimes taking a stand is louder than any argument. That night, as we sat across from each other, the bills still on the table, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. Power in a relationship isn't taken by force, it's held by consistency, by boundaries, and by refusing to be complicit in someone else's disregard. Emma had joked about divorce, but I had shown her the cost of ignoring respect, and the cost wasn't negotiable. The next morning Emma moved differently. There was a tension in her movements, a subtle caution in her words, as if she was stepping lightly around something she hadn't expected. The playful, teasing woman from yesterday had disappeared, replaced with someone more measured, more aware of the boundaries I had just drawn. Over breakfast, she didn't joke about divorce, didn't make any sarcastic quips. She simply reached for her coffee, avoiding my gaze for a few moments, then met my eyes with a quiet acknowledgement. No words were needed. The deal we had made with 10 hundreds on the table wasn't about money. It was about understanding, about mutual recognition, about the gravity of treating someone's emotions and dignity as a joke. By mid-morning, Emma finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. I didn't realize how serious you were," she said. I nodded, letting her feel the weight of her words. It wasn't about shaming her. It was about establishing a new standard. The lesson wasn't cruel. It was necessary. I had spent years accommodating, laughing off little slights, ignoring the subtle erosion of respect. Not anymore. The day stretched on, quiet but charged. Every glance, every movement between us carried unspoken understanding. She tested me once, a small half-smile when I entered the room, as if seeing whether I would revert to the old pattern. I didn't. I kept my calm, my resolve intact. That tiny test, so easily ignored in the past, now mattered. And she understood that. By evening, the tension eased slightly, replaced with a fragile but real respect. Emma didn't need to speak the words. Her actions said everything. We had crossed a threshold. The dynamic had shifted, not through argument, not through threats, but through the quiet assertion of boundaries, the deliberate choice to refuse complicity in mockery. 10 hundreds on the table, and suddenly, the joke wasn't hers to control anymore. That night, as I reflected on what had happened, I realized the truth about relationships and respect. It isn't always about compromise, not always about yielding to maintain peace. Sometimes it's about standing firm, letting silence speak louder than laughter, and showing the people you care about that their jokes, their dismissals, their flippant disregard have consequences. Emma had laughed at my request for intimacy, but by counting out those 10 hundreds and sealing the deal, I had reclaimed something far more valuable than money. I had reclaimed respect, balance, and a measure of authority in the relationship I refused to let be trivialized ever again. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen, acknowledged, and heard, not by argument or confrontation, but by the quiet force of unwavering boundaries.